Okay, it's 6 o'clock. Let's call this meeting to order. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag, United States of America, republic for liberty and there you go.
Councilmember Lane,
Here.
Councilmember Whitmer, Councilmember Lewis,
Preemptive strike.
Vice Mayor DeGolia,
Yeah.
and Mayor Holland.
Here.
All present and accounted for.
Okay, we have 3 presentations tonight, and we're going to start with the Officers Memorial Day.
So there you go. So last week was actually police week, a little bit late, but great. This is in recognition of National Peace Officers Memorial Day. In 1962, President Kennedy proclaimed the 15th day. Calendar weekend falls is recognized. Whereas the candlelight vigil is held on May 12th, regardless of the day it falls, National Peace Officers Memorial order. Whereas Atherton honor the minute law enforcement to the protection of the life, and whereas the town would like to honor California lost their lives in London. Sadly, it was 12. Now and therefore, as mayor of the town of Atherton, and on behalf of it, I proclaim 7th 20 recognize remembered for those officers who the ultimate sacrifice, both serving and protecting the city.
Thanks, Chief.
Service too.
Okay, and then our next proclamation is the San Mateo County Mental Proclamation. I know we have Letitia on mental health here, so if you have anything to add, I'm going to read this proclamation. Oh, in recognition of Mental Month, this proclamation recognizes as the Mental Health Month. Atherton to stigma, urge support, and promote wellness to address mental health and substance use conditions. Whereas in 2020, 15% of San Mateo County adults reported poor mental health, 14 or more days in the past month. 42% have sought professional help for their mental health. 2023 to 2025, San Mateo grade 7, 9, and 11 reported social and stress, 24%, 25% respectively, and chronic sadness and homelessness last 12 months. Whereas while behavioral health conditions are common among all types of demographics, certain communities face inequitable access to services, including people of color, immigrants, LGBTQ+ community, individuals with disabilities, veterans, youth, and older adults. And whereas on December 9th, 2025, the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors unanimously adopted resolution number, this is a long number, 081556, affirming the county's commitment to the well-being of current and future generations, making San Mateo County the first jurisdiction in the United States to do so. Whereas the resolution recognized that with more than a quarter of San Mateo County residents being under the age of 24, that most mental health challenges begin before the age of 25, mental health is not only a present-day concern, but a generational responsibility for generations, treating mental health as a foundational public good, not merely. Whereas the San Mateo County Behavioral Health and Recovery Services Office of Diversity and Equity, Belton Institute Peninsula Suicide Prevention, Mayor's Mental Health Initiative, and partners are collectively organizing activities that San Mateo County community members can participate in throughout the month, including free in-person and virtual events, advocacy days, and social media. Whereas the City Council of Atherton wishes to increase the public's knowledge of signs and symptoms of mental health and substance use conditions, professional and self-help resources, and self-care practices. Now, therefore, as mayor of the town of Atherton, on behalf of the Atherton City Council, do hereby proclaim that the month of May 2026 be recognized as the Mental Health Month in Atherton to enhance public awareness of mental health, help end the stigma, direct members of the community to resources, and support mental health and substance use conditions, and honor the county's historic commitment to the well-being of current and future great together. Yeah. So, Tisha, I know you're online. Do you have anything you want to add?
Yes, thank you. I would appreciate just a couple of minutes of your time. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, city manager, staff, and residents of the town of Atherton. My regrets that my family schedule prevents me from being there live, but I thank you for the accommodation. Most importantly, I thank you for this proclamation, for your commitment to really partnering to being an important partner in the community. I am, blessed, privileged to serve as a public member on the Behavioral Health Commission for San Mateo County. And I'm essentially, I find that it is incredibly important to have all members of the community really elevate the needs of health, brain health, mental health. It is, the San Mateo County Behavioral Health Commission is really committed, and my colleagues on the commission, I've served there for almost 9 years. And we really are committed to the goals of promoting wellness and recovery, enhancing public awareness, which obviously the town of Atherton with this proclamation is partnering with us to promote the importance of mental health awareness in the community, and of course the knowledge of mental health and substance use conditions. Our goal is shared, and that is to eliminate stigma, to provide resources for our community members. We use this month, this year, we have framed Mental Health is Ours as the theme for Mental Health Month. And as was earlier mentioned, there is a website where all members of the community, I encourage you to visit smchealth.org/MHM for Mental Health Month. So that's smchealth.org/MHM. It is just an opportunity to attend events, to come together and really support those in mental health, recovery, and really learning about the different resources, the many resources, and there's always opportunities for us to see our community members, to be able to partner in this wellness initiative. And what I will say also is that it is communities like the town of Atherton that really just enable us to promote the importance of mental health. So obviously we know it affects all ages. Personally, for myself, I remember as a child, even to today, as being a mom of a teenager, and there's all the different life stages where we really do get to honor our mental health, and also care about our neighbors, and ask how we might be able to be partners in their mental health wellness. So I just would, again, want to encourage everyone to come to these events. I want to acknowledge the town of Atherton for being an important community partner in recognizing May Mental Health Month. And again, just thank you for this opportunity. And hopefully in the future, I'll be able to be there live, or a colleague to receive the proclamation at a future meeting. Again, thank you very much.
so much. Okay, so moving on to our next presentation, we have Sam here to talk to us about the Corridor Connect project.
Great, thank you, everyone. Good evening. My name is Jessica Manzi. I'm the Director of Project Delivery with the San Mateo County Transportation Authority. Just a point of clarification, we're different than Samtrans, but we are certainly closely related. It is a great source of confusion that our email addresses say Samtrans in them. But again, thank you for having me here tonight. Next slide, please. I'm here to just give you a quick update on the status of the 101 Corridor Connect program. And I'll talk to you about sort of the two pieces of that, the 101 multimodal strategies, as well as Active 101. And then I'll highlight the local priority project for Atherton, as well as give you some information on a new grant program that we've established to help advance these projects. So for those of you who may not be familiar, the San Mateo County Transportation Authority plans, funds, and delivers transportation projects and programs within San Mateo County, manage voter-approved sales tax funds from both Measure A and Measure W to fund a variety of different types of transportation projects that help improve mobility for residents throughout San Mateo County. Next. So first I'll start with what is 101 Corridor Connect. It was basically a collaborative program to identify and prioritize congestion management projects along 101 it does look beyond the highway infrastructure and considers the mobility needs of the corridor as a whole. So we really were looking at identifying projects that meets everyone's mobility needs, regardless of how they choose or are able to travel. And in development of this, we had really robust partnership, including with Caltrans, the cities, transit agencies, the county, as well as CCAG. We have 4 overarching goals for the program: focus on safety, connectivity, sustainability, and inclusivity. And so these are the guiding lights that we use to help prioritize projects throughout the process. And what we got out of this process was to identify regionally significant projects that were impactful and also supported by the community. It also served as a special type of plan that the state requires in order for projects to be eligible for a certain pot of state funding, which is called the Solutions for Congested Corridors program. So if you made it onto the list of priority projects in 101 Corridor Connect plan, you'd be eligible to apply for this pot of funding. And the goal too was also to be able to leverage the community outreach that we did around this effort so that the local jurisdictions could point to that and demonstrate both that we had a robust engagement process and that the project was identified as being significant, which would therefore make it more competitive for external funding sources. So in developing the plan, we split the work up into 3 different pieces, understanding that the mobility needs and how people actually define congestion management could vary by where you are in the county. So we had a separate plan essentially developed for the North County, Mid County, and South County. Obviously, Atherton lands into the South County bucket, and we worked very closely with Atherton staff along with other stakeholders like Commute.org, Caltrans, Caltrain, and Samtrans, as well as the other jurisdictions within the county. So now I'll go into what the multimodal strategies are. So basically, these are planning documents that identify and prioritize projects within San Mateo. They were developed based on adopted plans that already existed within the county. So we were really building on the work done within each local jurisdiction and leveraging that to build upon it. The strategies were developed for the entire 101 corridor as this first effort in identifying regional projects. And again, they do include all types of projects, whether they be highway, active transportation, transit, other types of improvements. This map just again illustrates the three sections for the county, the North County, Mid County, and South County. South County multimodal strategy was adopted earlier this year in February. And again, built on, identified the priority projects for this part of the county along 101. Let's go. That's an,
It's private schools.
but we would have,
Oh.
or just county. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if it was within 1 mile of 101, it still is considered as the planning. All right. So yeah, I mentioned it already, but we did quite a bit of community engagement to help identify and prioritize these projects. I'm not going to go through this whole list, but basically we did a mix of in-person outreach as well as online outreach to ensure that everybody had the chance to participate regardless about where they were, their availability of the day. So all in all, we were very happy with the amount of engagement that we had in this effort. Here's some pictures. It was a really exciting opportunity to engage with broad cross-section of the had a variety of different events, different pop-ups at various locations in the county. Yeah, and as part of the conversations, it was, really focusing on what challenges people face in transportation if they're having a hard time getting certain location, or if there's having a hard time getting somewhere, and then if there are specific locations within the transportation network that aren't currently working for them, it's an opportunity for them to identify that. And then another piece of the engagement was to meet with community-based organizations. So these were very targeted groups representing different populations within the county. It gave us the opportunity to have a more in-depth conversation, really diving into specific groups' challenges and how the transportation network is serving or not serving their needs. So this just puts some numbers on the outreach statistics, both in-person engagement activities as well as virtual efforts. So again, we're really happy with the amount of engagement that we're able to do, as well as the number of people who actually participated in this. So using the previous plans and documents that have been developed by each of the jurisdictions, and then overlaying that with input that we got from the community, both in gaps in the network that they had and concerns, as well as areas that they thought should be prioritized. That information was consolidated to identify priority projects. Each segment of the county has 20 priority projects identified, and those ultimately became the priority projects that we'll identify as being regionally significant.
So where you did these outreaches and took the votes and things like that, it didn't look like any of them were in Atherton. Is that true?
I believe we hit every community, but I defer to Robert if you actually know which event we're at here.
I don't remember the event, but I do remember that they did do some community engagement here in town. It was either in front of the library or at the park during the
Okay.
event.
All right.
Yeah, we made a point of hitting every community.
Okay. Thanks.
It's one of the highest numbers we've seen a lot of county surveys come in front This is, I think, the biggest numbers that I've seen on any outreach. So congratulations. Good job.
Takes a lot of work, but at the end of the day. All right, so then the next piece, so multimodal strategies really focused on all the modes. This next piece is focusing on active transportation, people walking, biking, rolling in San Mateo County. And so again, this was a little bit more focused than what we did with the multimodal corridor. With the multimodal strategies, we looked at an area of 1 mile on either side of 101, so a bigger area, acknowledging that if you're driving or on transit, you're going to be traveling a longer distance than you would be if you're walking, biking, or rolling. And so the Active 101 focused at a 1/4 mile distance from the 101 corridor, both along and across, to identify those projects, knowing that the people, if they're walking, particularly riding bikes, are going to covering shorter distances than they would on those other modes. So a similar map to the previous one. This is the same study area 101 from northern and southern limits, but again, it's just a narrower buffer along 101, a 1/4 mile radius on each side. And again, with this, we did follow up with additional community engagement, both in person as well as online activities. The online activity was a chance for people to basically pay for different projects. So use your money to build projects that are most important to you. And I alluded to this before, but again, the part of the methodology for this process was to take all of those underlying plans and the associated projects and then overlay feedback from the community on where they were most interested in seeing improvements or had the biggest challenges. And so that's sort of this heat map is what you see, where you have the bright yellow is where you have the highest level of interest. And next slide has a lot of information, but basically what we did with that previous slide and the information there was to build a connected continuous north-south route. And this wasn't intended to be the most direct route, but we did want to have a continuous route that both crossed 101 as well as traveled along it. And one of those statistics at the upper right basically tell you when all of these projects are built, this is how much access could be improved. So people would have 82% access to 82% more grocery stores, 21% more schools, 90% senior care facilities, and 20% more bus stops. So building out this network really does have tangible benefits to that live along the 101 or near the 101 corridor. In terms of next steps, so the first is really to highlight the project that would benefit residents in Atherton as one of the priority projects from the multimodal strategy in the South County, which is Marsh Road. So when I'm talking about like this mini grant, this is a project that would be eligible for those funds if the town were interested in pursuing that project.
So later on, you talk about that $4 million and that it's $750 per project. Something like Marsh Road were to be selected, it's actually within 3 jurisdictions. So is $750 per 3 or $750 for all of it?
Yeah, so the maximum is $1 million. We'd fund up to $1 million for a project that is multi-jurisdictional in nature.
$1 million.
So it'd be up to $1 million.
Okay, so, but the other, all 3 would have to do a joint proposal?
I mean, you could propose it as the town of Atherton and you'd be eligible up to $750,000. And then you would just be coordinating with them as appropriate as through that project development process.
The project was going to cost more than $750,000.
Right, yeah. The intent of the funding is really just to help move the projects along the process, which in most cases means you need to do a feasibility study, you need to do some conceptual design, very early efforts to get the project moving. There's no illusion that this is going to fund construction. But the hope is that we can use this seed money to actually start work on the project and then make it competitive for either external grants or even our grant programs.
Very fine, thank you. Sorry for jumping ahead.
That's all right. You've freed the.
Just was interested what the money was.
Yeah. So as we discussed, we've created a new mini grant program specifically to help launch some of these projects and transition them from lines on a map to actual projects on the ground. We'll fund either projects for the jurisdictions or technical assistance for us to actually assist you in developing a project. Really, again, it's emphasizing the planning work, not any capital investments, but will help you be competitive for larger grant.
Showing the tie-in makes that grant more likely too, right?
Right, exactly. So again, as we mentioned that the funding is available to the priority projects. It can be used for things like feasibility studies, planning studies, conceptual design, community engagement, up to $750,000 per project, unless it's a multi-jurisdictional project, in which case you'd be eligible for up to $1 million. And something that's unique is we don't require any local match. Most grant programs.
If there is local match, does that make it attractive? That not relevant?
It's not really relevant. We're trying to provide this as a service and make it as easy as possible. The streamlined application that here, it's basically a letter to us saying that you're interested in doing it and that you have either the staff resources to support the project or that you'd want to work with the Transportation Authority to help deliver the project. And then if you do get selected, we just require that we do a site walk with one of you so that share your experiences and insights on the corridor, and we can use that to help.
Want us to walk on where?
Well, we can not necessarily walk along. You can always find a safe location to look at it from.
It was a bike thing, so you just bring your bike down.
Yeah.
It's a fun ride.
But yeah, so we're not.
I've ridden it.
We're not expecting people to come in with a local match. I mean, if you had that, you could certainly put that in your letter, and then we would consider that compared to what other jurisdictions are.
So these funds could evaluate the project and estimate cost and estimate what other construction-related grants may be available. Is that correct?
Yep.
Is there a timeline on this, or is this just like rolling?
Yes, you guys are still on top of this presentation. Why am I even here? Next slide, we'll get to that.
Packet.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I appreciate it. All right, so where we are here is we're talking to everybody about potential projects. We are going to release the call for projects next month with the applications. And again, this is just a letter of interest being due in July. And our goal is to make a decision about which projects get funded in August, so that for projects that aren't successful in getting funding, you apply for our bike and pedestrian call for projects that we're also targeting to release in August. So this is by no means the only source of funding. It's just a new opportunity.
But you're weighing those based on the color code that was on the previous chart, showed the red ones with had the highest interest and the highest payback, versus the ones down here seem to be green.
Really, projects that are identified as priority projects are eligible. So we're really welcoming all of those. We haven't, I mean, it's a new process, so we haven't developed, a specific priority.
I was just trying to
screening.
to the other chart that you had where you had all the red was up in the bay for the most part.
Yeah, that was just reflecting, that information helped us prioritize the projects. So that's baked into which projects are identified as priorities already. So
Right.
I think it's, once you're a priority project, you're sort of on even keel with everybody.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And then again, we evaluated a lot of projects that didn't make it to the priority list. And that doesn't mean that it's not a good project. It just means it wasn't identified as being regionally significant and wouldn't be eligible for this extra funds. But we have our highway program, the bike pedestrian program, those projects would still be eligible for those other sources.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. And then this is a little bit repetitive, but again, just reinforcing that if you are interested in advancing one of these priority projects, talk with Robert and city staff or town staff, and you can talk to us about your interest, apply to the mini grant program. You're selected, do that site walk with us. And we also are highlighting that we now have a on-call bench of based organizations so that if you do want to leverage an existing group that we already have contracts with, have that available to all of the jurisdictions within the county. So we've pre-selected them, have existing contracts. So it'd be a fairly streamlined process to manage of those CBOs. And with that, and I'm not Sue Ellen, but if you have detailed questions, she is the person to ask. But I'm happy to field any other questions I may see if.
It looks like you have within the project, which would be a boardwalk over the channel along Marsh Road, right?
Yep.
You have that here as of prior discussion, Atherton staff, or also with other county or Menlo Park staff, or just?
Yeah, so we were engaging with staff from every jurisdiction that is included in here. I don't know off the top of my head if that project is identified in Menlo Park's plans, but again, all of these projects came out of adopted plans. So Robert, you might know if it exists in others.
So the question is that project identified as just an Atherton project or a multi?
So the project, as you know, started out in our Bike and Ped Master Plan. It is also incorporated into the CCAG Bike and Ped Master Plan. And so when you look at the county-wide plan, the project is located in there. And as part of the community engagement and outreach that the Transportation Authority did for the 101 Corridor Connect studies and things, they reached out, they talked to our community, they reached out to us. We submitted a few projects for them to consider in the plan. And this one floated up to the top in terms of a priority project.
So my question comes from, since there's $1 million for a multi-jurisdictional project for 750.
Yeah. We would, like I say, we could broach, if desired, we could broach the county to partner for that.
Mostly county.
And because to be effective, it's not just going to be in Atherton, it extends into unincorporated county. And I think as envisioned, there would be signal and other controls at Fair Oaks Avenue. But this being a study versus design and whatnot, I'm not sure that the study itself would require that full $1 million. But we would have to
Well,
take
if
a
we
look,
could get
a
it,
closer
why
look
not?
at it.
You know?
Well, we also have to be cognizant of, I think the total is 4 million available.
That's okay. We can take 25% of it. Just don't talk yourself out of it, Robert. Come on. Robert
If you're
doesn't speak
asking
for the council.
then it may be a little
God
challenging.
bless.
Jump over
So,
it.
Yeah, okay,
So-
Elizabeth wants.
I just want to say, this is really wonderful, and I'm so happy that it's to us and bringing it up to council for consideration. And I am strongly in support of doing everything we can to build deck over the channel and the connecting bike ped route after the channel's closure to the county and then all the way up to where it's gonna at the one interchange, I guess. You know, that's a little messy, but at least these little kids aren't riding their bicycles on Marsh Road, 2-lane traffic.
So can we, immediately in June, we have our meeting talking about active transportation projects in Atherton. So maybe have this be part of our guys' discussion, since are we allowed to give direction on a presentation for stuff like this, or?
Absolutely.
You can technically raise it as a future agenda item. You're also allowed to make brief comments, directing staff for future items. I do also just want to remind you, Mayor, that we need to take public comment on the presentations before we move forward.
Public comment.
That was our lawyer, for the people who don't know who that
Yep.
was.
I
Okay.
could tell.
All right.
Voice from
Any public
above.
comment?
Yes, keeps us in line. So, okay.
Thank you, Mom.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
does anyone else have any other comments?
That I think suggestion about direction is right. I think also courts now need to
Okay, now we're gonna take public comment on presentations. And also, can I just lump it all together, Mona, of items that
Yes.
are also,
Yes.
okay, great. So now we're taking public comments for items that are not on the agenda and also the presentations. Anyone? Great. Now it's time for disclosure of ex parte communications. Does anyone have any
None?
report out?
No.
Okay. And then we have departmental written reports. Is there anything? Discussion? Okay. Mona, do you want to do our report out of closed session?
Yes, thank you. The council met in closed session on 2 items today. There was no
We
public
can't hear
comment
you.
and there was no reportable action.
Reportable action.
I-
Okay, consent agenda, which is items 1 through 7. Does anyone want to pull any items for discussion? Nope. Do we
I
have
move that we approve.
motion?
Go ahead.
Do we have public comment on consent?
Public comment on consent, anybody? Oh, okay, we have a motion?
I'll
Second,
second it.
seconding. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Now on 8.
now we are on the regular agenda, which is item 8, provide feedback and direction regarding the Samtrans Reimagined Dumbarton study, which will be Robert.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council and public. I'm just going to do a brief presentation, and as you said, we're looking for direction and feedback, particularly if the council is interested in having a letter sent to either jurisdictions or, the Transportation Authority, Samtrans, or other legislative folks. And so I'm just going to hit a few highlights of the presentation that Samtrans gave to the Transportation Committee in March. And so basically they have a project called Reimagine Dunbarton, which is intended to study how I'm having trouble here shifting, there we go. Looking at the Dunbarton Rail Corridor that extends from, East Palo Alto all the way up to Redwood City. As written in the report, there used to be a rail bridge across the bay and up towards San Francisco and connecting through to Redwood City up to San Francisco. That rail service stopped in the 80s, and since that time, there have been various studies as to how to not just utilize the right-of-way, but how to facilitate transportation of a variety of sources of methods, including transit and active transportation. And so this is the latest effort. It is solely focused in San Mateo County, whereas previous studies extended all the way out to the East Bay. And so here you have a picture of that corridor starting at University Avenue and extending up into Redwood City near Middlefield. And then what they are envisioning is a kind of a transit connector to the train station in Redwood City. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so there already is a Dunbarton Express bus system that runs from this area and also Santa Clara. And it goes across the bridge, which is right next to that rail thing. So I guess when these people were making the presentation, did anybody ask them what's the added value there? Because there are 3 lanes over there. They could paint one of them red if they didn't feel that the buses could come across so fast, as opposed to spending millions of dollars to fix something that's been dilapidated and out of service for like 40 or 50 years. So was that question ever asked, or did people just not know there already was a Dunbarton Express?
So I think that this is separate from that. That is a transit connector to the East Bay. This effort is solely focused about how to utilize the rail corridor in San Mateo County. And so right now it is sitting vacant, growing weeds. I think there's various vehicles that park and stage in various locations that you might notice as you drive down Marsh, but it is unused, unmaintained, relatively unmaintained property. And so the question is how and if that property can be better utilized for either transit or active transportation or other community uses.
So, so is it all right if I ask a question? So are they looking at ripping out the tracks and putting road in there? Is that what
that-
Yes.
The current proposal is basically to take out the tracks, or I say, they're doing a study. They've been seeking public input. They don't have any design or anything, but this is what they're trying to do is refine a vision of what that corridor might look like, what the constraints are, and to kind of develop what a project might look like. And so in terms of timeline, they're just finishing up the community engagement process on the early phases. So they've collected data back in the fall of 2025, solicited input through the winter, and are basically now at the point where they're trying to identify and potentially screen alternatives. Once they do that, they're going to do another round of public engagement before they select a preferred alternative near the fall of this year. And again, after that, continuing public engagement and then trying to figure out next steps. So there is no predefined project at this point, but it's really what is it that can be done with a corridor. And so as they do that, they want to figure out a project or projects that are fundable, that are implementable and responsive to community needs, and hopefully effective in terms of meeting travel demands. And so they illustrated a few different areas where old rail right-of-way or other areas that were repurposed for either bus connectors or bike paths, et cetera. And so what they're looking at, obviously, in terms of an intra-county connector, utilizing that rail corridor is really tying in from University Avenue and getting folks to the transit station in Redwood City. And so providing a short direct connection with limited stops, limited traffic, et cetera. And then something that also provides additional community benefits and active transportation opportunities. And so I'm not going to go through the entire presentation, but they did do this first phase of engagement that ran through March of this year. And they're just now starting to develop the alternatives. We haven't seen that yet. They're working on it. They'll be sharing it with us. But their outreach included pop-up events, road shows, community meetings, and as well as presentations to transportation committees like ours throughout the jurisdictions that are being served. And so I'm just going to hop back to the map. And one of the real questions for you are what the concerns are that the town may have and whether or not those should be raised and voiced to others. And one of the hot button topics these days is the housing laws and how they interact with transit. And so if service along the corridor met the definition of bus rapid transit, which is related to having dedicated right-of-way, which this would have, and a level of service of 15 minutes, 15-minute headways during peak hour, it would be considered bus rapid transit, which would make any stops along that corridor I'm going to say they would be considered transit-oriented stops in relation to SB 79.
Development.
And so
Development.
it's really not, I mean, utilizing the right-of-way and providing opportunities for the public to use it is a great benefit. Putting in active transportation, even transit are good. The real issue is making sure that the process includes a full study of all the impacts to all those affected. The other issue that we have is that we would have a stop near us, which is great. However, there is no real access to that stop for Atherton residents. So should that come in, as of now, Lindenwood, which is our closest neighborhood, is completely walled off from access, and they would have to come out of Lindenwood on Middlefield, go down Middlefield, go down Marsh, which doesn't have any sort of active transportation component to get here. And so conceivably, if this were to happen, it should include any sort of connectors for the community to actually benefit from it.
And all the Fair Oaks area would be impacted.
Well, what's that?
Slide 11.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
the entire Fair Oaks, Atherton
They
area
haven't
would be.
figured out where their stops are.
yeah,
yet.
so this here is a half-mile band that's drawn. And so you'll see, yes, so Fair Oaks is there, but in Fair Oaks, there is some pedestrian access. At least on
Which would make it
on
more
Marsh,
like,
there is some pedestrian access.
which would make it more likely for SB 9 to impact North Fair Oaks earlier than Lindenwood.
Yeah, because the buses are going to stop at the same bus stop.
It's the
just
same
put
bus
a
stop,
number
so
on
it's
it.
just a
So it'll
radius
be
around
your
the
area,
stop.
for sure.
We have two other questions of people who are waiting, Rick and Elizabeth. So Rick first, then Elizabeth.
Okay, this focus and concern around SB 7 would apply if this corridor became a
BRT,
Bus rapid transit.
bus way.
bus rapid
They
transit.
call it a bus. And would it apply if this were an enhanced pedestrian and bicycle lane without a busway?
No.
That's extremely important.
Sure.
So
So my comment is, from CCAG's perspective, they are taking very strong stance in lobbying the legislature that if this, to restrict this from being BRT slash SB 79 combination, because it's not just Atherton that would affect it. There's a number of other communities that are, and just not gonna, it's kind of like a situation that was an unexpected situation that from a good thing. So I think the vision is, like you say, to have a rapid bus streamlining along this corridor, stops along the way, and they don't have the traffic of El Camino and all the other major streets, and then a nice bicycle path and pedestrian path to access this. And also it would clean up an eyesore, which is clearly an eyesore, and it would get really nice to do. Otherwise, I think that you just don't have the bus and you have it as a bike ped situation.
Doing comments?
I have,
Well,
went with
wait,
my
let's-
question. But I
Yeah,
thought
I have a
Let's,
comment too.
Well,
everyone's
those
got
guys were
comments, you
not
guys,
asking
so
questions. They were having
let's-
discussions.
let's finish asking our question before we start with our comments, because we comment between questions and the comments, so.
Excellent.
So
Really
let's
learned a
finish,
lot.
look at me mayoring, guys, so let's let Robert finish his presentation.
What he did. He's done.
vehicle access really adversely impacted on. Oh, I understand, but that's Marsh Road access, not our Marsh Road, but where Marsh Road goes down past Chilco. Basically parallels.
So an SB 79 only applies to where the stations are, not the entire corridor. We don't know where the stations are because it's still very early, but
It applies to bus lines that meet certain criteria
the
as well.
whole length of it, even between the stations, or is it, I thought it's a radius around a station.
Have the mark.
Well, it's when I was on the transport. I asked if they knew their stations. They said those aren't the stations. So I'm just
Those are
curious.
just people
Those are
locations.
just, yeah,
So can I have ask a question on that then?
yeah.
So does a stop count as a station along something like this?
Yeah, so whatever the
Yeah.
transit stop would be is
Yeah.
where they
Yeah.
would
So
do
that'll
that
happen
radius.
every 6 blocks or something like that?
It would reasonable to assume it'd be on Marsh and Bay Road. That's a,
Well, it's definitely gonna be on Middlefield Road because that's, it's right where it comes in and starts sliding down.
Okay.
So right through.
right.
Shows it's going
What are
through.
these dots? What's the blue?
This is their estimation of where employers and residents are and can link up. And I think that was just shown for a buffer, but this is, I think a little bit cleaner.
The
A
other one
map.
shows, so.
That kind of shows the length of the corridor, along with key activity and destination points.
So presentation kind of focused on the language they use. A project that envisions converting the Dumbarton Rail Corridor into a rapid bus line with additional walking and bicycle connections. So the principal focus is the bus line with additional bike and pedestrian facilities. Are there advocates that are focused on having this just be a bicycle and pedestrian facility and transit corridor without the bus, given like what Bill said about the bus already existing along Marsh Road corridor? Whatever, is there an advocacy for just pedestrian and bicycle?
I'm gonna say, there may be, I don't know. They're the ones that did the outreach and are assessing what the demands are. Keeping in mind that this study is being done by Samtrans, the bus service.
The question.
Sense.
Yeah, did they take into consideration a few years ago? There was a drive to actually just take this rail line and just turn it into a bike path and have it continue all the way down to Mountain View? Because this has already been looked at one time, and this is exactly where they were going to do it, but it was going to be buses and walking paths only. And now suddenly there's going to be buses on it.
Well, I'm going to say that there's been a variety of studies over the last few decades as to what and how the right-of-way could be used. And I think when I first started here, there was a coordinated study with Facebook, now Meta, about having some sort of East Bay connector that came up and then again transited up to the train station. So it's been studied in a variety of manners over the years. This is a new effort to try and figure out what can be feasibly funded.
So if we combine what Rick was suggesting along with our concern for SB 79, I think that we're not poo-pooing the whole project, but we're saying, hey, you know, it's worthwhile to have bikes, walking paths, don't put the buses on it. And if you do put buses on it, then we need an exemption from SB 79, not just us, but Menlo Park and.
What was your question?
And what do you think
Yeah.
of that? Says his question during the question part.
That was a question.
Yep, that's
Yeah,
good.
I was gonna say,
As
you
I can
finished with a
tell.
question mark, I'm
Did
sure.
you see at the end? My
Yeah.
voice went up.
Yeah.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions before we do? Okay, any public comment on this item? Okay, all right, now for comments. I know everyone has comments.
Happy to go first, or I'll wait, whatever.
Go ahead.
I think it is a really good effort to assess this corridor that, as Elizabeth mentioned, is an eyesore, completely unused, and does connect the Dumbarton Bridge area where the bridge is to the Redwood City Transit Center ultimately. So this is, I think, a very important corridor. And I think we should be strongly in support of this being a bicycle and pedestrian corridor that enables people to easily move through this congested area between these points. And because of SB 79, I think we should be strongly opposed to making this a bus route. Given the fact that there already exists a bus route, making it a bus route would be far more expensive and unnecessary, and it would have serious adverse housing impacts on local neighborhoods that are within a quarter and a half a mile, where SB 79 would allow developers to build 7- and 9-story buildings. So, of course, SB 79 could be amended, but frankly, given the history of the state legislature, I think that's probably a pipe dream. And right now it hasn't been amended. So as of right now, I think we should strongly support this to be a pedestrian and bicycle pathway.
Right,
Chair.
yeah, I have a question really quick before. So the options on the table for us in terms of what our action is to write a letter to our legislators or
Samtrans,
Samtrans.
legislators, governor.
Everybody. Anybody who,
Okay.
and those that won't.
So I strongly support what Vice Mayor DeGoey said, except I think that we could say, unless the bus is not allowed unless the SB9 component is resolved. So I would not just get a blanket statement that but no buses at all, but SB9 component is resolved. Buses would be a
She say, okay or no?
She's suggesting that the bus access be connected to.
Put the buses on there. That's an exemption on
Yeah.
SB 79. I don't think the buses are necessary. We have so many buses that don't have anybody on them. So I'm not in favor of that amendment. I'm more with Rick on the pedestrian and bike only.
Yeah, I would say the pedestrian bike is the preferred approach. If in fact, because I think the reality is that this is Samtram's study, it's going to be bus focused. I would say there are first of all, it's another example of many that we've had that the overall planning strategy for SB 112379 and SB 9 wasn't well thought through as a macro. All right, so this is a classic example of when you do things piecemeal, you get really bad planning. It's terrible planning. So my thinking would be that since I agree, I would say that we want to make a recommendation that's primarily bike and pedestrian. If it is approved for bus, then I would say we'd want a 25-year waiver on SB 79 for this area, for two reasons. One, because there's a lot of SB 1123 and SB 79 that can happen that can actually make a nice neighborhood for certain areas if you're along that route. That would be useful to have bus lines. And with the 25-year gap, that stuff can fill in so that SB 79 wouldn't be a factor. In 25 or 30 years, depending on the ongoing development or overdevelopment or misplanning of San Mateo County, it could make sense for some certain areas along there to be SB 79 potential because of the growth. So a 25-year or 30-year gap give everything of time to absorb natural, what I would consider natural neighborhood development. And then we'll have to see where the bus lines, what the use of bus lines is, because I agree, I see empty buses all over the place. They're getting in the way. And the other thing that's going on in terms of the overall strategy about transportation is each group is doing its own planning around transportation. So Samtram's doing this, and Caltrans doing that, and Commute.org is doing this, and then there's Waymos and self-driving taxis all over the place. So where do they tie in? One of the big things we talked about on Commute.org is the number one reason that people don't take transit is because they can't get from the transit station home. But none of those places, they're knocking out Waymo as a factor in terms of their planning. So unless somebody has good planning on a macro scale, this is not a good idea for anything other than bike and transport.
Spending money.
Yeah.
Spending money,
Right.
which the county likes.
good question. Who owns the land?
What?
It's the
Samtram.
I believe
Right.
Samtrans owns it.
Samtrans.
See?
So it's the bus line,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So,
right.
yeah, so that's why they're,
And if it's their property, do they have the ability to to make stipulations on the use around it or not?
I think thought is if they have a bus line running that, they take some other
Is it
buses
what?
off of Elk.
So
That's what I've heard,
Right.
that they're going to reduce the bus transit on Elk.
are you sure that the Samtrans owns that? Because of the fact that it was owned by a rail corridor that was bringing freight from the East Bay over and then up to San Francisco. You look at the history of that, that's who owns that. Now, I don't know if it's the current freight line or one that possibly was there beforehand, but it was a freight line carrier. It wasn't a bus system.
Yeah, no, I believe that when freight service stopped, Samtrans bought the corridor. And it may have been around the same time that they bought the Caltrain corridor.
In the background slide in the presentation, it says it was acquired by the district in the early 1990s.
I stand corrected. Sorry.
Is Samtrans only a bus facility, or does Samtrans also engage in active transportation solutions other than?
Their primary focus is bus service. However, to get to bus service, active transportation is needed. Right? So if you say, I want to get to a bus stop, you're going to walk there, ride your bike, et cetera.
Well,
So in terms of service, quote unquote, that they provide, their primary service that's provided is related to transportation. So that's going to be bus, shuttle, and those things. There are funding partnerships through the TA that help fund all of these other things as well.
so I know TA has given grants for
Yeah.
bike paths and pedestrian walkways, but Samtrans isn't involved in that. That's the TA. They're separate organizations.
They're kind of joined at the hip, for lack of a better way to put it.
Okay.
But that being said, they do fund bus stop improvements. They do fund access to bus, and they're heavily involved in the Grand Boulevard Initiative, which is envisioned as a full multimodal corridor in the long term. And so when we talk about we all know that one mode of transportation isn't enough, and being able to provide flexibility and usability for all modes is important. So they know that it's not just going to be bus service, but to be effective, that bus service has to be linked to everything else. And that link is typically through an active transportation network.
Okay, I have not done comment yet. In terms of the letter, I think that it makes no sense to connect SB 79 to new public transit projects. All of the housing mandates have, a lot of them require no parking for it. So they need us, all the communities, to invest in high quality public transit to support all the housing that we are being expected to build during this cycle. And people need to get around. So we should be, all of us, in support of this bus line, because it will be useful for the community and would help relieve some of the traffic, especially given that a lot of these places people are going to be expected to drive. So it will benefit our community to have less traffic. And I think this high quality bus line would help us. So I think having the connection to SB 79 makes us adversarial to what is a good public transit project for our community. And I think it makes no sense for them to connect the law. It made sense for existing high quality transit stations, but this is new. We don't know if it's going to work, if it's going to be popular. So having them go lockstep together doesn't make any sense to me. So I think having a bus line will be great. I don't think having SB 79 connected to it makes any sense for the entire corridor. And I think that extends beyond just this project to all projects. So is my view.
I agree.
So I'd revise my proposal for our position to be that the council strongly supports making this corridor a pedestrian and bike lane improvement. And if SB 79 is amended to not apply to this corridor, then to support a or evaluate the bus line. I mean, to me, there's a cost issue here. The bus line's going to cost a lot more than a pedestrian and bicycle way. And we know that there are all these tax proposals coming at us because BART is failing, Caltrans is failing, and other public transit solutions are not paying for themselves. And we're going to get hit with this in the next year. And we don't know exactly how people are going to respond to that. But I'd say we should really consider supporting that if and only if SB 79 is amended. Make it not apply to this.
I would amend your amendment to say limited bus line, because anybody
We can
that sits out
evaluate it.
there and looks at the number of buses that are out there that have 0 people in them, they start small. If they're going to put buses there and they start small and all the buses are 3/4 full, okay, then add a bus. But don't start there like they've done everywhere
That's
else and just
operational.
buy 20, 50 buses,
Councilmember,
triple wide ones,
you make a good point, but that's
Waste.
just operational, strategies. It's not. And if Samtrans is going to fund this and pay for this,
So I
With
have
our
a,
tax dollar.
I have a different approach. I have Rick's approach in a different order. All right, go ahead.
it's my approach.
Well, okay, but you're both, your approach, okay, your approach. So here's the way I would start the letter. Because of SB 79, we can't support bus traffic on this thoroughfare. If because it puts entire communities at too high a risk of traffic and residual impacts. If SB 79 were not part of this, we could consider a broader view of how the transportation impact could be helped in this situation. So I want to hammer SB 79 on the front end and not say once we say we agree to the idea of this or this or that, they read that and then the rest of it doesn't get read. I'd hammer away at SB 79 on the front end, saying we would look at reconsidering our position if that were not a factor. That way, it gets us back into the mode of, we're not against it, but clearly we can't be for it the way it's set up.
That's
Well,
the way to approach it. But
Because we're writing multiple letters, from my perspective, it's the legislators and the governor saying, you guys need us to support public transit. You have to disconnect it from SB 79. And that's it. And then Samtrans is its own issue because they're the ones, it's my view.
I think I disagree. I think the principal value of this would be a pedestrian and bicycle corridor. And if SB 79 is amended, then I'm fine with having, assessing the financial and other impacts about making it a bus line. I don't know if that's the right decision, but if SB 9 is amended, then it's perfectly valid, and I would have no problem with it as long as it financially works. But I think the principal thing is we need a pedestrian and bike lane corridor. And right now it's just a useless eyesore of train tracks.
I agree with you.
And the only other alternative, right down the middle of El Camino.
Do you feel like you have?
I think we have enough feedback from the council to write a letter or multiple forms of letters. What I would ask maybe is that staff draft a letter, the council give authorization for us to use the mayor and the vice mayor to kind of wordsmith it before we send it out.
Yeah. And Samtrans, I wonder if they're also supportive of having SB 79.
oh no, I mean,
Pause.
yes, they are.
This, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. They're the same, they're having the same pushback issue.
They would get more support if it wasn't part of it. Yeah.
Right. So maybe they could be an ally in this. Let's see.
The same kind.
Okay.
Follow the money.
Cool. Okay.
Guys just
We're
like
good.
to spend
Okay.
money.
So let's move
Glad to hear that.
on to
The mayor and the
next
So moved.
item.
That was so much fun. Let's
Good
do
morning.
another
That
one.
was so fun. Okay, so next time is number 9. Is Brittany online to present this one? We have the Gilmore House Development Site discussion.
Good
Good
off the last
evening,
hour.
council members, town planner Brittany Bendix. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah,
Brittany?
of course.
Great. So now we get to have some housing element fun and revisit program 3.8 46A, which addresses potential future housing at the Gilmore House in Holbrook Palmer Park. This program in the housing element is outlined to have started by soliciting proposals at the end of December 2024, then issuing an RFP, a request for proposals, by the end of July 2025, with an aim to complete the development by December 2028. We've been focused pretty much most of last year on getting certification of the housing element and then pursuing the inclusionary housing ordinance. And then in December of last year, we pivoted to addressing as quickly as possible Senate Bill SB 79. So at this point, when we were doing the annual progress report, it became evident to me that we haven't really had a discussion on where we'd like to pick up on this issue. We are behind schedule, but it is possible that we can defer this to a later date if necessary or if preferred by the council. Based on the annual progress report, it did appear that we are on target for or on pace with our lowest income housing tier for the regional housing needs allocation. And I've included those numbers in your staff report. We have had some hiccups pursuing housing on Menlo College, but we're planning to have further discussions for Menlo College as well as Menlo School within the next couple of months to see if there are some alternative projects that can be pursued there. And then also I have an update that in our RM10 program, the planning department has already approved one site for development. That's actually the Menlo Circus Club, where they've replaced their caretaker unit with new housing for one unit. And then we have 4 potential pre-application sites within the RM10 program that might develop upwards of 40 to 45 units, each with at least one low-income unit. So that's where we're at as of today. What I've kind of framed for you in the staff report is potentially revisiting this discussion when we get to the mid-cycle check-in in March of 2028. That would effectively mean that we're soliciting proposals by the end of that year with issuance of an RFP in 2029. Based on the time frame that we had put in the housing element, it would indicate that development wouldn't be completed until the next housing element cycle. But the way the housing units are counted is by permit issuance, not by project completion. So the goal here wouldn't necessarily be complete development of the housing, but the issuance of the building permits. So with that, I can conclude my summary of the report and pose it to you for questions.
The only thing I would say, a question I have, Brittany, strategically, we could determine first of all, I agree with the idea of moving the date out, but strategically, we could look at our numbers coming into the end of our plan, looking at the next plan, and strategically choose to either put the permit on one side or the other of that date so that we get counted maybe into the next plan rather than this one if we were close. So just as a strategy.
That a question?
Yeah, I'm asking.
That's correct.
I started with the question. I asked the question,
Yeah.
which is, would that be something we could do? That's sort of the first part
Oh,
of
there
it.
you go.
Right.
Nice.
I did.
I heard
First
that.
started.
Sounds like a Whitmer
Play the
question.
tape. I said,
Definitely a
I
Whitmer
started with a
question.
question. I started with a question and I explained the
I don't
question.
What do you
So-
think of my comment, says the question. Randy? Okay.
I
All right,
I have 2 real
Real
questions.
questions, great.
Real questions.
Okay, the first question is this coming before us now because the housing element referenced these specific dates that are identified in the bullet points on page 1? And if
Yeah.
so, are there other items in the housing element that reference specific dates which we might have, passed?
So yes, this is coming to you because there are specific dates in the housing element. This is the most kind of complicated version of a requirement that we need to meet on a specific timeline. There are other housing program efforts like updating the website to fully include all tenant protection materials, for example, that we had said we would do by 2025 that we will focus on completing in 2026. So when I was going through the annual progress report, this one felt to me as pulling out in regards to a specific effort that we are far enough behind on and requires council direction that I didn't want to just leave it at staff level to address.
So my follow-up question is, I think it's in the housing, I think it's in the staff report, although I seem to have not marked it, so I don't see it off the top of my head, but I think that in here is language that supports what you said about the critical date being that before the end of our housing element, there needs to be a permit filing. And the key issue is not the completion of the development, but the filing of a permit. And given that statement, could we change this to move the time period to the end of this housing element period rather than 2020?
So that's not technically what's before you right now. To change the text that's in the housing element, I would need to bring before you a general plan text amendment. This is, and that's not standard practice to shift timing when we address it in the annual progress report. Really, the intent here is to get some initial direction from the city council on where they are right now with this potential project, so that I can assert it in our 2026 annual project report in case anybody from the state looks closely at this specific program.
Okay, that's a question.
What's the date of the bid cycle check-in?
That would be your regular March hearing in 2028.
2028. So
And
we could delay this until then, knowing where we are.
Correct.
Is what I read in the analysis section of this. And that's, you're kind of asking us would we be willing to go do that?
The date is fairly flexible. It could be, I think it's easier to align with the annual progress reports, which is why we set the mid-cycle check-in to correlate with that, because then you have kind of the full picture of how you performed that in the previous year. So it could be that you want to have this discussion again in next year's APR, or at that point would be 2027. So this would be another year beyond that in 2028 that I've suggested in the staff report. I wouldn't go beyond that because in the event that the town feels like moving forward with this development is important or integral to satisfying the RENA requirement or the AFFH requirement, you want enough time to actually go through the process that we've identified.
So it's a question. Do you agree
All right.
that due to the fact that we don't have any plans yet for SB 79 yet because they're not accepted until the 1st of July, and because we have some RM10 facilities, including 23 Oakwood, as well as some things on Bay Road that we haven't gotten things from, that it would be prudent to wait till the mids, your humble opinion, question mark.
Yep. Nice.
That was to you, Brittany.
Did that make sense to you, Brittany?
Yes, as a question before public comment, yes.
Okay. So does anyone have any other questions before we take public comment? Okay. Do we have any public comment in the room or online? Okay, time for comments.
Wait, didn't we already do that?
What?
Didn't we already do that?
Oh, yeah,
Well,
so now she can
some of
answer my
us-
question.
So,
She
yes.
held off on my question.
Yeah,
Got a comment.
yeah, Rick, go for it.
So I think we're, given this SB 79 and other housing bills that I think said an application couldn't be filed until July of this year, we're kind of in this transition point. And based on what Brittany said, there may be 4 RM10 proposals. There's a bunch of stuff that might come in. I think we should let all of that develop. I consider this property the least desirable property to actually develop because it has all kinds of implications for us as a town to take a house that's used by our chief of police and park manager, and be putting a number of new housing units into our only public park, which is clearly in opposition to the deed under which our park was given to us. I think this is the least desirable housing for us to pursue. So I'm interested in putting this off or eliminating it. And if the rest of the council doesn't eliminate it, but put it in the housing element, I can understand, but the council has changed and maybe there's enough now we can eliminate it, but I consider it the least desirable of the bunch. So I'd like to push it off to see what else develops while we're in this big transition.
I think eliminating it.
I,
So I mean,
That could be a
so
trigger.
we can't opine on that.
Right.
We are limited by what's on the agenda, so.
Well, no, this is on the agenda. Can, we- I mean,
You can't,
Well,
you could not eliminate it tonight. It would, you could direct staff to move in that direction. Then Brittany would have to come up with a general plan amendment. You'd have to have public hearings and all that sort of stuff.
And I would
Yeah.
Which I
caution
think we should-
against doing that. This is the city attorney speaking right now on this item. This is a program that was adopted by the council as part of the housing element. So in addition to the procedural aspects of amending the general plan, it would then have to go back to HCD for certification. And they would have to, it could reopen an audit of our RENA obligations and all of that. I think what staff is recommending and advising is that you continue your obligation of reviewing this to see whether it's necessary or not. At this time, based on the ADUs that have been constructed and based on applications that the city has received, one that we've received and 4 others we're anticipating, it's possible that we meet our AFFH requirements, our RENA obligations without the further need to do this. But just to revisit this at some point in the future, i.e. March of 2028, to ensure that something like this is, not necessary. So again, that's kind of the question before you tonight.
Okay. Cool.
I agree with what Mona said. That if, to the extent that we can down the road, park development. See, about setting the CD.
Second.
Okay, do we need to make a motion on?
I thought she did.
Okay, I mean, yeah, she opined, but not everyone has
I'll make a
opined.
motion.
Oh.
And
Great.
the motion.
Okay, she made that motion.
I'll second it.
What'd she
I
say?
already seconded
Oh,
it.
did you? Well, how do you get a second
Yeah,
before
sure.
she did it?
I think you should arm wrestle for second.
Go ahead. You can have it.
All in favor?
Okay, all in favor?
He needs it more than I do.
Aye.
There we are
Okay,
on the
great.
last item. How
All
about
right,
that?
last item, consideration and direction regarding the formation of a city charter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and members of the council. As the council recalls, we started some outreach for the establishment of a city charter in January. We had a number of public workshops. Some were more attended than others, or better attended than others. We got a lot of feedback from those that did attend. The feedback in general was, why are we doing this now? What's the purpose of this? What's it going to do for us? We talked about prevailing wage. We talked about raising taxes, the threshold for taxes. We talked about whether or not a charter would protect us from all of these housing laws we've been talking about this evening. And the sentiment at the very end was not very supportive from the community that attended the meetings. So it's come back to you now for a decision as to whether to move it forward to the November 2026 ballot. The staff report has the steps that we would need to go through to do that, if the council chooses that, or just to end the outreach at this point and dismiss the issue.
Okay.
How much would it cost to put on?
It's an incremental cost. We've already got 4 seats of election, so it's de minimis cost.
I didn't hear that.
It's a de minimis cost.
De
It's not-
minimis
yeah.
cost. But it would be a cost.
Yes.
How much work?
Anybody else have any questions?
I felt like it's a waste of time, the whole thing, because I don't think it's a good idea. Once we
Stop
determine.
commenting.
Comment.
Oh,
Have to do
oh.
public
You're not
comment.
on that. You're asking questions.
Oh,
We really need to train
You
us. a little
guys-
Does
bit.
anybody else think
I
this is a
think-
waste
what
of
do we
time?
think?
Does anybody else think
Does
this is the way it's
everyone
done?
think the way I think?
Thank you.
Okay, so do we have any public comment in the room or online? Okay, Eric, keep going.
You know what, I felt like once we determined that it wasn't going to help us on the housing issue, it was a total waste of time. And I appreciate the staff would put the effort into it. And I was at some of those meetings, and it was clear that once there was determined that some of the key issues weren't going to be solved this way, it was just not going to work. It's going to be something that would just not go necessary for the town.
Okay, great.
Second that.
You feeling that way?
Feel the same way as Eric. I was 100% in favor of it. And if we were going to go forward, I wanted to make sure that the taxes would remain as they are for general law cities, not going to 50+1. And if anybody wanted to change that, which they would be able to, they would have to put it in front and explain it to the population. And I think that came loud and clear through some of the meetings that we had. People were afraid that we use this as a method for raising taxes in the future. And so the things I brought up when we had this conversation, I'm not in favor of moving.
Okay.
I appreciate the work that they did, though.
Yeah, I will comment. I think there was a lot of interest in this, and so I think this was a good exercise. So I think we answered the question that the public wanted. Not going to solve a lot of the housing issues that people had expectations of this helping. So cool. So we have 3 no's. We need to make a motion, or is this?
No, I just needed direction from the council
Great.
not to continue to proceed.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. Is there any council?
I will not report that I'm reading next week.
You're not.
Children. Watermelon seed, and I'm reading Sleepy Sheepy.
Cute. Okay.
Just enunciate clearly, okay?
Yeah, I will. But don't put it in the minutes like you did
Sleepy.
last time.
I had a question, but this is time for comment, so I'll let it go.
What's your, about this?
No, never mind.
Why is the sheepy so sleepy? Okay. All right. Okay. Let's adjourn this
Go,
meeting.
go.
have to-
I
We're not
will-